Hello, everyone. Welcome to session 3 on interviewing. Before we get started with this, I just want to make sure that you all have submitted your resume and cover letter assignment to me. I've seen several of them come through my email in the last few days, so thank you for that. If you have not done that, please get that to me as soon as possible. Again, what the requirement was for you to find a job posting of a position that you would possibly be interested in applying to, and then creating a resume or cover letter that you would use when applying for that job. And I will start reviewing those this week, and I will be corresponding with each of you individually with feedback on those, and I'll suggest some changes for you to make, and you'll make those changes and resubmit to me via email, and we will continue to work back and forth that way until those resumes are absolutely flawless. There will also be an assignment for next time, which we will talk about at the end of the session here. One thing that I did want to note was that on the syllabus it says that a hard copy of the resume and cover letter is required. Because this is an online course, that is not the case, and you are welcome to just email those to me. But if you prefer to submit a hard copy somehow, if you're in town and want to bring it by the office, that is fine also. So as we jump into the interviewing content, we started out last time talking about resumes, and that was kind of where the plane gets off the ground, and it's the thing that will get you into an interview potentially, but it could also keep you from getting the interview. But it's definitely not in and of itself going to get you the job in most cases. However, the interview is a little bit different. This is often the final piece of the job search process, or one of the final pieces, and often not everybody that applies gets an interview. Most of the time, a very small percentage of people that apply will get an interview with the company, and this could be conducted by telephone. It's becoming more common to have these conducted over Skype or Google Hangout or in some way virtually, or then there's always the traditional in-person interview. And typically, before being offered a job, you will be asked to come in and interview in person. So you need to not only be concerned about the things that you're saying and the research that you've done and the knowledge you have about the company, but also know how to present yourself non-verbally, how to dress, how to make eye contact, how to have a firm handshake, how to make small talk with people in the waiting area, and while you're waiting for the interview to start, and all kinds of things like that. So here's a video I want to start out with having you watch, and it's just something kind of fun to kick it off on a high note. Now, with all of these videos, I will do just like I did last time, and I will go ahead and play them through this presentation, and if you can hear them okay, go ahead and feel free to watch them through here. If not, if you're having a problem with them, go ahead and hit pause on the recording and go into Blackboard, and I will have each of these videos linked, and then you can go in and watch the video on YouTube and then come back to the recording.
English?
Says here you're into skydiving, and you do stand-up comedy. That sounds exciting.
Yes. Can I keep this mug?
2 weeks notice? Nah, I just stopped showing up.
Well, to be honest with you, I left my last job because I had a problem with the boss.
Oh, that's understandable.
Yeah, well, I showed him, though. Him and that wife of his.
Well, actually, what we're really looking for is someone who can micromanage.
Yo, dog!
Your wife looks just like Benjamin Franklin.
I'm actually a very talented bird caller.
Haven't you read my blog? What would you rather be? A big fish in a small pond, or a small fish in a big pond?
Definitely a big fish. Unless I could be a piranha. Those are wicked.
I don't know. Just wearing my slips, you know.
Oh, and I can whistle at a very high pitch.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, no offense, but what do you know?
Why don't we stay off the cell phone for the rest of the interview? Like I was saying, we're going to need someone who can micromanage. Hello?
Hey, yo, it's Chuck there.
Yo, dog!
Yo, dog!
Yo, dog!
Okay, so as we continue in this, I want you to think about what is it about the interview process that scares you, that makes you nervous, what things do you have questions about, because it's often a very high anxiety, high stress process. You are often sitting there, could just be with one other person, you could be with a group of people, and you are the center of attention, and they are evaluating you. Anytime we feel like we're being evaluated, there are going to be potential nervousness that comes along with that. So the more that you are able to identify what those things are that makes you nervous about it, the more that you can prepare for it in advance, and the unfamiliar becomes familiar, and it's less nerve-wracking for us. So in the in-person classes, I will often ask students this question and then write on the board some of the things that they have questions about, and then make sure that I address those throughout the course of this presentation. That's not something that I am able to do today in this format, so I am going to try to hit on as many of the things as possible that I'm familiar with. But if there are things that are not answered during the course of this session that you would like to talk about or get an answer to, please feel free to email me and let me know what those things are, and I'll be happy to respond to your questions or talk with you over the phone and try to help you to feel as confident and prepared for an interview as you possibly can. So one of the big things about interviews that everybody asks themselves and wonders when they're going into it is, what questions are they going to ask? Now that's a good question to ask yourself, and it's valid, and there are all kinds of potential interview questions that you can find that I would encourage you to look at and use to practice answering and to ask yourself. You can Google them. There's a lot of good ones actually on one of the pages in your Job Coach workbook that you can go through and ask yourself, and be prepared to answer those questions. At the same time, let me set you at ease a little bit and tell you that there's really only one question that you're going to be asked in an interview. Now, you're going to be asked this question in a number of different ways, but what they're ultimately trying to find out is, why should I hire you? Or another way they're asking this is, what's in it for me? You always want to talk in terms of the other person's interest, why they should hire you, what they can get from you. So if you're talking about yourself and something you enjoy or something you are good at, make sure to tie that back around to answer the question of how that can benefit the employer. You're going to need to know a little bit about their company, about their goals, about their industry, about what it takes to be a good salesperson, or to be a good marketer, or to be a good HR representative in order to clearly articulate how your skills can benefit them. 80% of an interview is soft skills, and that is an evaluation of how do you fit within this company? How do you relate to people? Are you going to be happy here? That's a very important question that employers are asking themselves whenever they are determining whether or not you're going to be a fit, because turnover is costly. I heard a statistic recently that said turnover can cost an organization 1.5 to 3 times that person's salary. By the time they go without somebody in an open role, and they pay to pull staff away to interview and to recruit and to train and do all those things that you have to do with a new person, they're wanting to find somebody that is going to stick around their company and that they feel like is going to be a good investment for them. So the more examples that you can give and the more stories that you can tell in answering interview questions, the more likely it is that you are going to be remembered. Now, you don't want to go through an interview, be one of several people, and then when they go back to think about your interview and reflect on it, you're just not really remembered. You didn't do or say anything to stand out. So you want to think about what stories you can tell, because people like and remember stories in order to set yourself apart from the competition. So this question, why should I hire you, is really broken down into 3 smaller questions. You can see those here. The first one of those is, can you do the job? What experiences, what knowledge do you have, and how do those things relate to the job at hand? So think about, in your past work experience, in past classes, in clubs and organizations that you've been a part of, when have you gotten an experience that is relatable to the one that you're applying for? The next question they're asking themselves is, do I like you? Are you a good fit here? Quite honestly, are you someone that I want to be around 40 or more hours per week? People are often happier and more productive in their jobs when they like the people that they work with, and that they are also will tend to stick around longer if they like the people that they work with and have relationships with them. So that's another thing that is being evaluated. And then the third question in answering the why should I hire you question that the employer is asking themselves and that you need to be answering for them is, are you motivated? Because if you can do the job and you are likable, and there are people out there that have those first 2 characteristics but that are not motivated, the first 2 are really irrelevant. I had a student one time that worked for me that was very good at graphic design, and he could make all kinds of very cool flyers and promotions, and that's really one of the specialties that we hired him for. And he was a nice guy, and he got along well with everybody, but he just didn't want to do any more than he had to. And there were times when we had projects that we really needed some good promotion and publicity on that we asked him to do, and he really never did do because it was a little bit outside of his job description, but it was where his gifts and skills lied, and he really didn't work out to be as beneficial to our team as we would have liked for him to be and as he could have been, because he really wasn't motivated to go above and beyond. So you want to answer for your interviewer examples of your motivation. What are some indicators of that? And you'll notice some interview questions ask about that. Tell us about a time when you made something happen, when you got a group of people together. Those might be some ways that you can show your level of motivation. So, I've talked about some sample interview questions that you can look at on your own. There are also some very common interview questions that you may come across, and I've found some videos that answer how to properly respond to these questions. The first one of those is the question that is often asked to begin an interview, and it is the statement, "Tell me about yourself."
That question of, tell me about yourself is so open-ended it can be intimidating. And so really a student can handle this question by thinking chronologically. Think back to high school, where they're from, and then get into their decision about coming to Ohio State and why they chose Ohio State. I think it's also helpful to give some results. That's a big decision about choosing where you went to college. Give us some results. Are you happy at Ohio State and why you're happy at Ohio State?
I really want to get a big picture of who this person is. It's usually about the first question after we've had some small chit-chat, and I want to hear about their background. Usually if they put it in chronological order, it's great. So walk me through, where they're from, what they did in high school. That can be a building block to what they do here at Ohio State. I want to hear why they chose to go to Ohio State, why they chose their major, and really it helps give me a bigger picture of who they are. It also can bring up some examples of things where we might find connections.
I want something specific to what they've been doing in college, maybe something in high school that they had accomplished or a part of. Maybe they were on the golf team in high school and now they're doing that in college, and tell me what their interests are and where they're headed with their curriculum and what they want to do when they graduate, some of their career interests. So not a lot of personal information. I don't want to know if they're married, have kids, their living arrangements. I don't want to know any of that. I want it to stay very much focused on accomplishments and things that are going to relate to the job.
When I ask a student, tell me about your resume, tell me about yourself, that's really the opportunity for them, in my opinion, to frame the interview. So I want them to not just walk through the components of their resume. I can read that, I read that, I understand that. I want them to pick the things that really links them from their experiences to my company. So the things in their experiences they're particularly proud of, the things in their experiences that demonstrates the leadership, the innovative creativity, the technical skills that they know that I'm looking for a finance and accounting job within J&J.
Well, which is a small town, and I went to...
Okay, so I'm going to cut that off there so you can see some of the things that employers are looking for when they ask you the "tell me about yourself" question. what you want to do is share mostly your professional background and show a little bit of your personality in that. Again, that's an opportunity for them to get to know you as a person a little bit and to be remembered, but you want to mostly keep that professional. They don't necessarily care about every detail of your childhood, starting from when you were 2. You can tell where you grew up and why you chose to come to Belmont and things like that, and then why you're interested in this role and this position, and get around to making it professional. They also will want to see what things you decide to share. Because a lot of business is making small talk and developing relationships with people, and there are things that are appropriate to share and that are not appropriate to share in those settings, and that's the same with an interview. And so that's going to be a good indicator for them too of how you make those determinations. The next one is we're going to talk about is the weakness question. How to answer the question, tell me about your greatest weakness.
Hi, John Haney for the Job Shopper. One of the most dreaded interview questions that virtually every interviewer asks at some point during the interview is, what is your greatest weakness? What is it about this question that makes it one of the most uncomfortable questions to handle? I understand that as a job seeker, you want to highlight your positive attributes instead of introducing any personal characteristics that could possibly eliminate you from consideration from the job that you want. The potential pitfalls to this question are real, so you have to be thoughtful and careful with your response. But if you admit that you have trouble getting to work on time and you resent being told what to do by your superiors, your interview is going to be cut pretty short. So what's the best way to handle this question? First, understand that as humans, we all have weaknesses. In fact, your career choices have likely been guided as much to avoid your weaknesses as to play to your strengths. Your interviewer knows this. What they want to gauge is how honest you are with your own personal assessment and acknowledging your shortcomings. The keys to answering this question lie in doing your homework so you understand clearly what your real strengths and weaknesses are, so you can prepare an answer that reveals an appropriate and relevant weakness, tells the interviewer how you deal with it, and how you leverage your strengths to compensate for any professional shortcomings. Whatever you do, stay away from the trite response that your greatest weakness is you work too hard, or you're such a perfectionist that you have to make sure that everything you produce is spectacular. Your interviewer knows it's nonsense, and what they're looking for is something honest, truthful, something insightful. They want an answer that indicates that you have at least some capacity for introspection and honest personal assessment. Look, if your weakness is a lack of organization or difficulty attending to detail, your response could be something like, I recognize back in school I have trouble staying on top of a lot of details. And after I miss some class assignments, I realize I really need an easy system to stay organized. My systems evolved over the years, and now I use a combination of tools on my PC and on my phone to make sure I write down the tasks I need to perform, track project assignments, and set alarms to remind me throughout the day whenever I need to meet a project deadline, attend a meeting, or make a call. I've also learned to delegate specific tasks to my assistant to ensure that contracts and other important documents are signed and filed the right way, that meeting confirmations are made, and that my calendar is kept up to date. The system's now part of my daily routine, so it's effective, and it lets me focus on business development. There. With the right preparation, you can reveal a weakness without appearing weak, and get on to more important things, like salary negotiations.
Okay, so there are some examples of how you might answer the weakness question. Keep in mind that there are certain responses that everybody tends to use that just are not very believable. Again, he talked about it in the video. I'm a perfectionist. I work too hard, etc. Those are not believable responses. Employers are going to sniff right through those things and draw the conclusion that you really don't know what your weaknesses are. And a sign of maturity and self-awareness is knowing what your weaknesses are, because we all have them, and showing that we have paid attention to them and that we have taken steps to improve them and make them better. That is what an employer wants to hear. So you want to just take a moment, not too long. Don't expand too much on your weakness. Just tell what it is, leave it, and then put a positive spin on it and say, but here is what I've done to correct that, and spend the majority of that response putting a positive spin on how it has made you better, and then how, as a result, that you can benefit the company through applying this skill. Another example that you want to stay away from is, oh, I just like to please people, or I take on actually, let me back up. A good example would be saying something like, I take on too much, and I have had to learn how to prioritize, and as a result, here is how I have determined what things are important and need to be done now, and what things I can distribute or delegate to someone else. Another example might be that you're more excited about the beginning of a project than the end of a project, and that you're really good at getting things rolling and organized and getting moving, but that you have had trouble in the past kind of finishing what you have started, and then talk about what you have done to overcome that. Maybe you have, at the beginning of the project, set deadlines up and periodic check-ins to make sure that you have done a certain thing by a certain point, or something similar, to show how you have worked to overcome that weakness. If you're not sure what your weaknesses are, there is an exercise called basements and balconies, and I hand this out in my internship class when we talk about the strengths workshop. So if you have completed that, you should have a copy of that. If you don't and you would like one, send me an email and I'll be happy to send that to you. Basically, it talks about each of the 5 strengths that are results of the assessment, and then it talks about things that you do very well when you're at your absolute best, and then things that you tend to not do so well, and traps that you tend to fall into, and what some of the weaknesses are of a particular strength. And you may read through those and think, oh yeah, that's me. I can think of an example of that. And then that gives you a starting point for something that you may want to talk about.
Well, with behavior-based interview questions, what employers are doing is they're looking at past behavior to get a predictor of future behavior. Let's say they ask, can you give me an example of a time where you took initiative to solve a problem? They want to hear a story about where you took initiative. And you need to organize that using the STAR technique, where you can talk about situation, task, action, and result. What I see a lot of students tend to do is they'll tell us a great story and forget the results. That's like watching a great movie and not seeing the ending of it.
Well, the STAR technique helps organize their thoughts. Behavioral interviewing is telling a story. You're telling us a story, you're setting up the situation so we understand exactly what you're doing. You set the frame, you set the picture for us in our minds. The task is, what was the problem? What was the issue? Set that piece up. And I want to know what you did, not my manager did this or we did this. I want to hear a lot of I. What did you specifically do? And the results, how did it end? It's like telling a joke and not giving the punchline if you don't add the results in there.
When they get those behavioral questions, take it back to it and specific example, explain what they did, set it up, give the details, and include a lot of names, dates, times, numbers, and places. The more details you can give, it really helps the employer understand the depth and breadth of what you accomplished. Oftentimes, if a student is giving examples that say, we did this and we did that when they're talking about a committee, I will stop them and say, that's great that your committee did that, but what specifically did you do? And what I find oftentimes that they didn't do anything.
You really want to kind of go through your resume, go through even go through the last couple of months of emails that you've had from student organizations, from your work, from different classes, and really get into the detailed 1 or 2 or 3 detailed stories that you can tell, that you can actually know exactly what happened, exactly what the concept was, who was in the meeting, what the real problems were, what the detailed actions were, and not only what you did, but some of the options that you considered, or that group considered before making the final decision, and then details in terms of what the result was.
Well, Dave, where you set a goal and you thought you did.
Okay, so a very common type of interview question that you're going to run into is behavioral-based or situational-based interviews. And as they said in the video, the reason behind these questions is because past behavior is the best predictor of future performance. It is a little more difficult for a candidate to just make up responses to these questions than something that is more general, because what these questions do is ask about specific examples or specific times when you have been in a situation and what you have done about that. There will also be questions about when times didn't go well. Don't be afraid to answer these questions. Again, be honest, be transparent. The more an employer believes what you are saying, the more they are going to trust you, and the more comfortable they're going to be in hiring you, because they're going to feel like you are the least risk to them. And as we talked about earlier, the hiring process is a high-risk action for an employer, so you want them to feel as comfortable with you as possible. So you want to be honest about when times didn't go well, but you still don't want to leave a negative impression. And so you want to talk about what things contributed to that not going well, and what you learned from it, and what you can do as a result. Also, when you're talking about things not going well, remember never to badmouth a previous employer, never to point blame on other people or anything like that. You still want to be professional and diplomatic in your description of the events. If you have a particular situation and you're not sure how to go about describing that to an employer, again, shoot me an email or give me a call or come by the office and let's sit down and talk about that so that you have a good way of describing that. So when you are answering a behavioral-based interview question, there's 4 things that you want to address, and you could think of this as being a star. You want to tell what the situation was, you want to tell what task you were charged with, what action you took, and then what the results were. So the situation may have been, I was working as an intern in a mid-level healthcare company with 2 other interns. Okay, that was the situation. The task was that we were charged with creating a social media marketing campaign. So then you talk about what action you took. And again, remember, as she said in the video, not just what action your group took, but what action you specifically took. So then you say, My role in this was the market research to figure out who our target audience is and to find them on social media and see what kinds of things they're talking about and incorporate that into our plan or whatever it was. And then you talk about the results was. We were able to increase the amount of followers, or we were able to find new avenues of social media to use, or it could really be countless. What examples you might use for each of those. If you want to go a little above and beyond and make it even better, you can add a CH. You can make this star starch, and then you can talk about the change. What change occurred as a result of your work? What impact did you make? This is an opportunity for you to be remembered by the employer. And then if you really want to go for the A+, you can add at the end, what does that mean for this role? Meaning, so I've done all of these things in this last job. Now, how does that benefit this employer? What is in it for them? As a result of that, I know how to research and execute this social media strategy for your company and can increase followers and whatever it might be for you. And then you're answering that, what's in it for me and why they should hire you. An example of a behavioral-based interview question might be, tell me about a time when you faced a challenge or a problem in the workplace. How did you handle it? Again, you're going to want to think about, what was the situation? What was the task that you were charged with? Or what was the problem or the challenge? What action did you take to resolve it? And then what was the result? Another example might be, give me an example of a goal that you reached and how you achieved it. Again, what was the situation? What was the task? What was the goal? What action did you take to achieve it, and what were the results? A lot of times, if you're working on something, with a project within a team, you may want to answer questions around that. If you can't think of an example from a job that you've been in, you can think about your organizational involvement and what experience you have working with other people. So then you can use a strategy with the acronym TODAY. You can talk about the team. How was the team put together? Who was on the team? What was the makeup of the team? What obstacles did you face? What were you tasked with overcoming? What were the duties of the job? What were the duties of the team? And then also your specific duties. Accomplishments. What did you accomplish? And how did you go about doing that? Not only yourself, but also the group as a whole. And then the last part is the important personalization of it. Your strengths and weaknesses. Again, what did you add to the team specifically? What were things that you looked to other people on the team to provide? So, all of that to say, what we started out with, you don't really need to know the questions as much as you need to know the answers. You already have the answers. You've spent your whole life getting experiences that you can share in the interview. The important thing for you to do is to sit down and spend some time reflecting on those experiences and those accomplishments and asking yourself, how is this relevant to the job that I'm applying for? What things can I do as a result of that? What things do I know as a result of that you can share? I would encourage you to have 5 to 8 examples of different stories. Again, because people remember stories and people can connect with stories. And you want to tell the story and then tie that back around to how it benefits the employer. Another reason that this is beneficial is because I can almost guarantee you that at some point in your life, it could be in your next interview, it could be down the road, you are going to be in an interview and they're going to ask you a question and you're going to get the deer in the headlights look and just draw a blank. I've been there. I've probably been there in every interview that I've ever been in. And you're asking, I do not know how I'm going to answer this. It's okay to take a few moments to think about your response, but you're going to eventually need to come up with something. If you don't know the answer, it's good to have these stories in your back pocket. Just go into telling one of these stories. And as you're going through the story, think about, okay, how is this relevant to the question that they're asking? Or what can I pull from this? And then by the time you get through the story, you may have something that you can use to tie it all together. And let's see where, here we are. So you may have something to, tie that all together. It may be a situation where you say, I don't know if this is exactly what you're asking, but, and then go into one of those stories. Again, you don't necessarily have to answer the exact question that they're asking if you don't have an answer to that. As long as you answer the big overarching question of why should I hire you, or are you motivated, or are you a good fit, or are you qualified? As long as you're answering one of those questions, that's really what they're looking for. And they're just asking all these little questions to get to the core of that big question. So focus on those and don't worry too much about the question within the question, if that makes sense. So I've just got some examples here of questions that great job candidates ask, because there's going to be a point in the interview where the tables are going to be turned and the employer is going to say, okay, what questions do you have for me? And you should have some questions prepared for them, and you should have a number of them prepared, because some of them may get answered throughout the course of the interview, or they may have just told you an answer to something throughout the conversation, and then you don't want to be turning around and asking that same question. The questions you ask also show your level of interest in the position, and that's something that employers are going to pay attention to, as well as to the quality of questions you're asking. So here's some good examples. One is, what do you expect me to accomplish in the first 60 to 90 days in this role? And then you can ask yourself, is this something that I think I can do? Is this something that I want to do? Another question is, what are common attributes of your top performers? What is it going to take to succeed? Are those things that I have and that I think that I can do and am confident in being able to do? Another question might be, what are a few things that really drive results for the company? Because this is going to give you an indication of the company's priorities. And it's always good when you're in a job to know what are the important things and what things are not so important, so you know where to spend your time. Knowing what drives results is going to help you with that. Number 4, what do employees do in their spare time? Again, that's just an opportunity to find out whether or not these are people that you would enjoy being around. Are there certain values that people in the company hold? Are there certain pastimes or traditions that they all get together and do? And is that something that you're interested in being a part of? And then number 5, this could be one of the real money questions. How do you plan to deal with XYZ? This comes as a result of research. Say, based on my research, I know that in this industry there are certain things that are a challenge, or something that has happened in the company recently that's been in the news for, and how do you plan to deal with that? That shows your interest in the organization and that you have thought ahead a little bit as well. Finally, you want to close the sale. You want to ask for the job. In closing, you want to summarize the key points. You want to summarize a couple of the reasons why you think you'd be a good fit, reiterate your interest in the position if you are in fact still interested after this is all concluded. If not, just, say, thank you for your time today. I've really enjoyed getting to know you and getting to know more about your company and that kind of thing. If you are interested, it's important to reiterate that interest because, again, as soon as you walk out of the room, one of the things the employer is going to be asking themselves is, how interested are they in us? And that's going to impact their decision on whether or not to offer you a position as well. You'll also want to ask at this point what you can expect moving forward and if there is anything from preventing you from doing so. Say, is there anything throughout the course of the day that I answered that you still have a question about or that I can reiterate? I have been on hiring teams before where the candidate has said something that is a little bit of a red flag or a concern for us, and in the closing or in the wrap-up, we have asked them, say, could you tell us a little bit more about this? An example of this is that Belmont requires all of their faculty and staff to be of the Christian faith, and so that's a question that we would always ask job candidates, and there would be candidates that really wouldn't give us much of a response on that, or it wasn't quite what we were looking for, and so we would go back and ask them about that and say, you mentioned this, can you tell us a little bit more about what you meant by that, or can you clarify this for us a little bit? And then after getting another chance to do that or to talk about it in a little more depth, we felt more comfortable with them and that we were on the same page, whereas that wasn't really determined initially in the first question. So don't be afraid to ask, is there anything that I can further clarify for you, or are there any concerns that you have that would prevent me from being hired for this position? And now it says asking for the job on here. That's something that is fairly bold. It's not a very comfortable thing to do, and so you can use some of the examples that I've given to kind of soften that a little bit. Unless you feel up to the task, then knock yourself out. Ask, can I have an opportunity to work in this job, or to serve in this role, or something like that. Just a final thing that is a graphic here of things that people through research have said that they wished that they had known before a job interview. And let me see if I can zoom in on this on my MacBook here. So basically it's common nonverbal mistakes. I will post this graphic on Blackboard for you to open it up and just browse through it. It's a good graphic because it talks about nonverbal mistakes and talks about how the impact of meeting new people is how you make them feel and how you're dressed and how your appearance is, and only 7% of what you actually say. It talks about some tips for clothing and some questions that you're likely to be asked and things like that. I'm not able to zoom in and see that clearly enough here, but it'll just take a few minutes to look at that, so I will let you do that on your own. So that concludes the lecture portion of the interview lecture. Hopefully there's been something here that you have heard that you can apply in your next interview. Hopefully it has served to alleviate some of that nervousness or some of those concerns or those questions that you may have about the interview process. What I want us to do now for next time is to actually put some of these skills and some of this knowledge into practice. So as you could see on the syllabus, which I will pull up here as you scroll down, is that on July 14th by noon, you will have needed to complete the interview prep packet and the video interview. So there are two parts to this assignment. There is a document in Blackboard that you can open up that has instructions for both of these assignments. For the written portion, you're going to need the Job Coach workbook, and there are some questions in there that you're going to need to read, to type out a response to, and email those to me. And then the other part of this assignment is actually conducting a video interview. I mentioned that video interviews through Skype and Google Hangout are becoming much more common, and so we want you to have some practice doing that. So what you will need to do is make sure that you have a computer with a webcam and with a microphone, because you will be video recorded, and there are some questions that you will be asked, and you will have 2 chances to answer those questions. So if you start answering it once and you mess up, you can stop and start over one time and try answering it again, and then I will watch those, I will evaluate them, and I will provide you some feedback. I want to show you here how you will access that. It is through Interview Stream. So let me open up a new browser, and you will go to belmont.interviewstream.com, and you will need to create a username and login. That just takes a minute, and then when you log in to the student view, you will see something similar to this. This is the dashboard. You will click here on Conduct Interview, and you will scroll down to Management 2000. It's the one without a name. It's just straight up Management 2000. You will click Choose This Interview, and then it will test your network. It'll test your webcam, your microphone, and everything like that, and then you will be able to continue to the interview portion. I'm going to exit out of that. Just wanted to show you an example of what needed to be done, but let me know if you have any questions on that. So then as we go back to the syllabus, again, that's going to be due on July 14th by noon, and I will provide more information before then about our next session. You'll see that is going to be a special keynote presentation. That's going to be a video of some kind that I will make available to you, and I'll give you more on that as that date gets closer. So I think that is all for today. Let me know if you have questions, and make sure to get your resume and cover letter to me as soon as possible if you have not done so. Thanks, and I'll talk to you soon.